What up, everybody? This is your boy Chris Reeves back with another video. Today I'm going to show you guys how you can make some dope combinators inside of Reason. We're going to take this 3 levels at a time. So first level, here we go. We're going to go into utilities, grab ourselves a combinator, and this is the first level of combinator that we're going to create using Reason instruments. Say, for example, algorithm and complex. We'll just drop them right into the combinator. We're not going to worry about routing or anything like that. That's our first layer of combinator, okay? This is our first layer combinator. And what I mean by that is this is the simplest way that you can make a combinator instrument, okay? And then also if we just go in here and we create a utility and we go ahead and create that combinator again, instead of using the instruments, we can actually use effects. So now we can go ahead and drop in some effects. Let's go ahead and drop in this Audiomatic, maybe this compressor here, and then we can lastly drop in, let's also drop in a Scream 4 as well. And yeah, we can call that our first layer effect combinator. So first layer effect combinator. And once we save that patch is ready to go. So if we go ahead and open up another instrument here, and I've saved it in our user library, so we can go ahead and just add this combinator effect into our show insert effects. We could just drop that guy right in there. And now it is creating this sound. This sound is going into that combinator that we created. Here's the bypass, and here's with it on. Now that Scream 4 is very strong on that effect, but as you can see, just by creating the combinator and dropping in some effects, you have your first layer effect combinator. And as far as the instrument is concerned, we have the instrument here. And right there, we just have an algorithm and we have a complex instrument here. That's our first layer of combinator. Look at that. You're already done creating 2 combinators, 1 effect and 1 instrument. Okay, so if that's the first layer, then we want to, actually make this a little bit better, right? So now let's go to the second layer of combinator. So we'll go ahead and add a combinator. And in this combinator now, we're going to take a look at what's happening in the combinator. So when you have this combinator, you have this mixer right here. And if we look at our first layer, we will see that basically what happens when you open up that combinator, you just see these 2 instruments are going into this mixer. And there's no way to control the volume or anything with that. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to create another utility device, which is a line mixer. We'll put our line mixer right there. And so now we have a line mixer. And guess what? If we wanted to, we could actually go ahead and just duplicate that. And we could just keep those going if we really wanted to, like we could just have a bunch of these line mixers and we could just route them into there like that. And then with that, we'll actually go even further than the second layer of creating combinators. We're like so far advanced now because for each of these mixers, we can put another instrument there, right? So we could have 6 complex on one mixer. We could have 6 Europas on another mixer. We could have 6 frictions on another mixer and so on and so forth. So this is the second layer of combinator that we're going to create. So what we're going to create, we're going to be a little more specific with what we're creating this time. This time, we're going to create some NNXTs, and I'm just going to go ahead and drop these in right here underneath the mixer. And as long as you drop them right underneath the mixer, they will add into that mixer accordingly. So now we have these different patches that have been loaded up. And what we're going to do is we're going to just load in some different kinds of files, some different kinds of patches into these NNXTs. Okay. So what we want is instrument patches. Okay. And where I want to look, we're going to go to our Reason library. We're going to go to orchestra and strings. Okay. And we're just going to load in some patches here. Okay. So let's say if we load in a bass right here, and we also can just load in a cello here, and we can create like our own orchestra combinator here, like a super orchestra combinator kind of type thing where we just have like all of these sounds loaded up into this guy. So we have some violin, we have some cello, we have a bunch of different things. And if we play that, so there's some different strings that play a different part. And what's really cool about the line mixer is now you can go in and you can change some of these pans. For example, like we just have all this stuff panned this way, maybe keep that thing panned into the middle. So you could change your pans. What you also could do is you can now go into the effects and you can add in an effect for this aux send. Now, what's really cool is, so like, let's say we add in a reverb, but this reverb is now added into the end. So now we can select how much of these instruments get this aux, which will be this reverb. That sounds like this bass sound. So let's just give it a whole lot of reverb. So you get the idea, right? So in creating that, so now we have that first layer of strings. But remember, like I said, if we wanted to, we could add more of these line mixers and we could just keep that going, you know, and creating more and more stacks of the same sound. So this can be our second layer, okay? Second layer of instrument combinator. And once we hit save, of course, now that's saved and we can go ahead and load that up another time if we wanted to. Now let's do a second layer for the effects. So we'll go ahead and go to Combinator. And again, we're going to add in some effects. Now, when this comes to effects, like we did before earlier, we went ahead and we did certain effects. We just put a combination of effects together, and we're going to do the same thing this time. We're going to have a combination of effects going in here, but now let's be a little bit more strategic about our effects, because we want to be able to do certain things with it. So maybe we can create something that will help us get another layer of complexity. So one of those things that we can use to get another layer of complexity is we could use something like this pulsar dual layer LFO. Now, if we use this pulsar dual layer LFO, we need to flip the rack, and then we can use any of these values here. We can send them into the LFO. So now we have effect that will have some modulation that's automatically happening, right? And there's something else we can do on the third layer, but for now, we'll just leave it like this on the second layer. So let's say, for example, we want to change the feedback amount based upon this first LFO. And we also want to change the decay on this second LFO. Okay, so we can go ahead and send this guy right there. So now we have a reverb and we have a Ripley, and we can actually turn this one on, make sure this one on, turn the level up. And what I want to do is I want it to do a ramp up effect like that. So we'll turn the level up and we'll do a ramp up effect like that. I must also turn up a decay. Oh, well, we don't need to turn up the decay, but let's turn these features up just like that. And then we can hit save on this guy, and we could call that our second layer effect combinator. And so what makes this the second layer effect is because now you have this pulsar that's automatically creating some modulation with this effect. So again, we need to load up a instrument. So let's just say we load up this bass. And now we're going to go into our user library. We're going to find that second layer effect combinator right there. So now you can hear it has this really cool like modulation happening. So that would be our second layer effect. So we have second layer instrument, second layer effect. We added in some utilities that we can use inside of our combinators to give us a little bit more flair. So here's the third layer of combinator effect that we're going to create right now. And I've saved for this layer the actual controls. If you notice on the first two layers, we haven't changed any of the controls. On this layer, we're going to be changing some of the controls. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to load up a sound. Let's try polytone this time because polytone is brand new. And we haven't had a chance to, do some stuff with polytone. I do like that patch. Okay, let's go ahead and copy that patch real quick. We'll delete this. So we're going to start and be very intentional from the beginning. So let's layer up and add on to what we've done already. So we'll make sure we use a line mixer. We'll go ahead and add in a polytone. We'll copy over that patch that we did earlier so that we make sure that we have that same patch that we found. Okay, now what we could also do is create a player. So there's different ways you could do it. You could do scales and chords. You could do chord sequencer, whatever you decide to do, totally up to you. But there's polystep sequencer as well. But just as another layer for our combinator, we're just going to add in a player. Okay, so that it can play automatically, we'll go ahead and add in this polystep sequencer. Now, what's cool about polystep sequencer is it actually has patches, and those patches contain their own patterns. So say, for example, if we choose this space drum, it already has its own pattern built in, at least one pattern. And what we can do is we can copy these notes and we can copy this pattern, and then we can go into the next one and we can paste this pattern here. And what we can do is we can alter this pattern so that it's not the same exact thing. And we can do the same thing and just continue to alter it, and we can go to edit, paste, and we can alter it. And maybe we get some alteration on that sound. Then maybe we come in here and press random a couple of times and just hope we get lucky with the way that the sound gets created. So we have 4 patterns that have been altered, 4 patterns that are random. And so now with these patterns, what I can do with the combinator is I can go into the configure and I can choose to go into the combinator editor, and then I can choose the polystep instrument, which is right here. This is polystep. Here is the polystep. This is what I want. This is polytone. Here's polystep. So I could choose polystep, and then I can choose a source. So I can say Control-1 is my source. And what I wanted to change is the pattern select. So now the next thing is the minimum and maximum number. So there are 8 patterns. So I need to select 1 as my first pattern and then 8 as my last pattern. And that will let me cycle through the different patterns that we have. See that? So now we can cycle through. I'll zoom out so you can see. Now we can cycle through the patterns without having to open up the combinator. So when I first grab the combinator here, I can go ahead and rename this by double clicking pattern select, right? And now I can cycle through these patterns just like that. Now, because we have polystep and it is on a run feature, meaning if I press play, it will automatically start to play that sound. So what I also can do is go into the editor and go to configure, and now I can add a switch that I can use to start and stop that run feature. Here is one switch that I can add, which is a run feature. So just by clicking it, here I have run now, and it is already designed and it is already designed. It's already designed to just run the pattern. Okay, see that? So now I can just run it straight from there, right? I can just do it straight like that. I can use one of these switches by going to the same place, choosing my source, and this time instead of choosing a control, I'll choose a switch. So I could choose switch 1, and then I can select this on run mode, for example. And if I set it there, no, not run mode. I'm sorry, that's not what I want. What I want it to set to is on. So now this turns it on and off. Okay, so if I click this, and now it turns it off. Now it turns it on. Now it turns it off. Now it turns it on. So this, we can set this to actually we can set it to pattern on/off. Okay, so pattern select is right above it. If it's highlighted, then the pattern's on. If it's off, then it's off. So now I can just play it regular, right? I can still choose my patterns. I can choose to run it. I can press play to run it. I can press this button to stop it from running. I can choose this to turn the pattern off altogether. Okay. So those are some things that we can do. So with the configure button, I can actually delete these things if I don't want them by pressing them and hitting delete. And I can just have this as simple or as complex as I would like. So for example, right now, all we have is a pattern on and a pattern off, which is for our poly step. But every time that we add a control or we add a switch, we can assign that control or switch to different parameters, either inside of the poly step sequencer or the polytone synthesizer. So we did some stuff with the poly step sequencer. Now let's do some things to the polytone. So I can go right here and click on the device. It's always two sections, the device and what it is affecting. So here's our device, Poly Classics Polytone. We'll go to source and we'll choose this control 2, which is this control right here, this knob. And we can look at the target and we can select, oh, what are some things that we could select? We can change the oscillator shape, all of these different things, pitch. We can change the mixer. We can use it as the mix morph button. We can change the performance. We can just choose a lot of different things here. Okay. A lot of times with polytone, this mix fader is actually already assigned to the mod wheel. It really just depends on what is already assigned there. But if I wanted to, I could assign that here as well. So we'll do control 2 and then we'll come over here to mix morph and layer balance. Okay. So now what that does is, let's go ahead and minimize this real quick. Now, as I move this control, you will see it also moves the layer balance between those two. Okay. And so we can call this one layer, or I could say like layer balance, or you can name it whatever you would like to name it, depending on what style you want it to be. Like what you want it to be, you can go ahead and change it to what you want it to represent. You can make them big, small, make them look metallic, make them look plastic. They have all of these different styles that you can choose from. And so I'm just going to choose this one just for now. I'm just choose this one. And as I hit exit, like I said, as I go up and down, I can see that it affects that layer balance. Okay. So like, say, for example, if we turn our pattern on and we just play this guy. Right now, the mode is set to single and polytone, and that's no fun. We need it to be set to something else so we can actually get it to do something. So we'll set it to mix. Let's set it to morph. So we can see like that is one way that you can add in some complexity, right? So remember earlier, we also had created some utility. We use the pulsar. We can do the same thing here now. Let's continue to add things onto this polytone, for example. Even the simple fact that we can add a whole nother polytone as well, like that is something as well that we could do. We just add a whole nother polytone, and it itself could have another player as well. That's another way that you can make it complex. It could have the same player, right? It could run under the same player. All of those things are possibilities that you can do inside of this combinator. And so you can have two different polytones, two different players, all kind of things happening with it, right? Just whatever you want to have going on with it. But let's say we choose this polytone here. So what's really cool about this, now that we have this 80s bass and we have this other instrument, whenever you are pressing this note, it changes or transposes the poly step. So now whatever you play is going to be in the same pitch. It's going to be in the same key. If we say, let's add in one more instrument, for example. So we'll add in a subtractor. And this subtractor will just continue to be our bass. But now what we can do is we can do a split between this subtractor and the rest of the instruments. So I'm just going to take the top of this key range right here. I'll take the top of this down maybe to about C3. So now we're only going to be able to play that bass guitar very, very low. Right. And then what we could do is we could then decide, oh, OK, cool. So that's kind of low. So now let's come in here to our octaves, maybe turn our octaves up. And then we can, you know, turn our octaves up like that. So let's go to our bass guitar. Oh, this thing is affecting it. Oh, cool. I didn't notice that. I didn't even notice that the layer that we created, our second combinator, was actually affecting this combinator. I didn't notice that. So I just bypassed that real quick. So here's our bass guitar. And our bass guitar is also receiving. We don't want that. We don't want the bass guitar to get the same sidechain rate. So we're just going to separate it. Okay, I think we need to turn that down. Maybe even one more. So now we have this bass guitar with the rest of this combinator that's playing. Maybe come over here and turn the bass guitar down. We can also change the pattern. So I actually like the way that reverb effect we had. I like the way that made that sound as well. So that's cool as well. So we'll go ahead and we have our run device. We didn't end up using this switch, I don't think. So make sure that you're in configure. We'll just go ahead and delete that. But yeah, here is our third layer. Okay, this is our third layer combinator as well. Okay. Now for the third layer of the effects, we can get a little technical in here. If we come into the combinator, there are some different ways that you can create effects, right? Like effects that change parameters based on things that are happening. So for example, you can use a sidechain input to determine how much equalizer or less equalizer happens. So what I mean by that is, for example, we can use the gain reduction and have that affect our transform. So we can have that create more or less transform depending on how much gain reduction is coming into this compressor. Okay. So for example, I'll go ahead and add in, I'll add in a redrum. So as we can see, this redrum, as it kicks, the compressor is turning on. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the CV out for the gain reduction on the compressor. I'm going to send that into a source CV right here. And what that will allow us to do is to customize what that gain reduction does. So if we choose CV in, we can set a target for our EQ, for example, and we can set that target to be the gain. So now anytime that the gain reduction happens on the compressor, this knob moves. Do you see that? Every time I kick this drum, that knob moves. So how could that be helpful? I can set it so that every time the kick comes in, it adds more EQ in the low end, or I can switch the polarity of these. I can switch the amounts, and now it will reduce that bass every time the kick comes in. But not just the kick. Anytime that compressor activates, it will subtract on that low shelf. But that's not all that we could do. Now that we set it to that CV1, we could use that same CV1 and set the target for the transform as well. So now, as you can see, every time that gain compressor comes in, it makes the transform wheel go up. See that? Every time it comes in, it makes the transform wheel go up. So what this is called is dynamic EQ, or just dynamic modulation, because we're using the gain reduction of the compressor in order to activate another effect. And so we can do that with any of these effects. Even more so if we go ahead and add it to the CV1 and we add it to the dry wet. And essentially what we're saying is we want it to start at 0. Audiomatic, we want the transform to be more. We just need to move this knob here. So as we move this knob, now the transform is happening more. Okay. You can also move it around. So now this is saying, okay, we want to be in between those spaces right there. So let's go ahead and save this. So this will be our third layer combinator, but we need to set it to effect combinator. Okay, we'll save that. And we have those there. So now whenever you just need to add any of these effects, you can just drag and drop them onto your instruments and you'll be able to add them there. All right, I hope that you guys liked this video. If you did, please be sure to leave a thumbs up, leave a like on the video. Just make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.